Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the back of the auditorium, smoothing down the fabric of her navy blue dress. It was simple, elegant, nothing flashy, just a dress, but the stares she was getting made it feel like she had worn a costume to a funeral. The ceremony hadn't even started yet, and already she could hear the whispers. "Is that Mitchell? In a dress? Never thought I'd see the day. Guess she finally remembered she's a woman." Sarah kept her eyes forward. She had learned a long time ago that responding to whispers only made them louder. Her hands were steady at her sides, even though her heart was beating a little faster than usual. She had faced enemy fire. She had made life or death decisions in the span of seconds. A few crude remarks from her so-called colleagues shouldn't have bothered her. But they did. They always did. Major Richard Holloway walked past her without so much as a glance. He was one of the keynote speakers today, dressed in his Class A uniform, every medal perfectly aligned. He had that swagger about him, the kind that came from years of being told he was exceptional. Sarah knew him well. Too well. "Mitchell," he said, finally acknowledging her with a smirk. "Didn't recognize you without the combat boots." A few of the junior officers nearby snickered. Sarah gave him a thin smile. "Holloway, didn't recognize you without someone else doing your job." His smile dropped. He opened his mouth to respond, but someone called his name from across the room and he walked away. Sarah allowed herself one small moment of satisfaction. The auditorium was filling up fast. Rows and rows of soldiers, officers, and high-ranking officials. This was a big day for Fort Braxton. A ceremony honoring the success of Operation Silent Crescent, a covert mission that had taken place 6 months ago in a hostile region overseas. The mission had been a massive success. Enemies neutralized, intelligence recovered. 0 casualties on the American side. It was the kind of operation that made careers. And today, someone was going to be awarded the Silver Star for their leadership. Everyone assumed it would be Holloway. After all, he had been talking about the mission nonstop for months. In every briefing, every meeting, every conversation in the mess hall, Holloway made sure people knew he had been in the thick of it. He told stories about split-second decisions, about holding the line, about bringing everyone home. Sarah had listened to those stories in silence because she knew the truth. She found a seat near the middle of the auditorium, her dress standing out in a sea of uniforms. A few people glanced her way, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed disdain. She was used to it. Women in the military were still a minority, especially in combat roles. And women who wore dresses to military ceremonies? That was practically unheard of, but Sarah had her reasons. The lights dimmed and the ceremony began. A general took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone as he welcomed everyone and spoke about duty, sacrifice, and honor. Sarah only half listened. She had heard these speeches 100 times before. Her mind drifted back to 6 months ago. To the mission. It had been a nightmare from the start. The intelligence was thin. The terrain was brutal. The enemy was dug in deep and they had home field advantage. Command had wanted someone experienced to lead it, someone who could think on their feet and adapt when things went sideways. They had chosen Sarah, not officially, of course. Officially, Major Holloway was the ranking officer, but behind closed doors, the mission planners knew the truth. Holloway was a politician in uniform. He was good at paperwork, good at presentations, good at making himself look important, but when it came to actual combat leadership, he was out of his depth, so they gave Sarah the real authority. Quietly, unofficially. "You'll be his tactical advisor," the colonel had told her. "But between you and me, Mitchell, you'll be running the show. Keep him out of trouble, bring everyone home, and we'll make sure you get the credit you deserve." She should have known better than to trust that. The mission had gone sideways almost immediately. The intel was wrong. The enemy had twice as many fighters as expected, and they were better armed. Sarah had to make a call in the first 30 seconds. Abort or adapt. She chose to adapt. She repositioned her team, changed the route, used the terrain to their advantage. Holloway had been frozen, staring at his map like it would give him answers. Sarah had taken over without hesitation, issuing commands, coordinating movements, keeping everyone alive. They completed the mission. They got the intel. They all came home. And when they landed back on base, Holloway had been the first one off the helicopter, shaking hands, smiling for the cameras, taking the credit. Sarah had watched from the back of the group, still in her dust-covered gear, her rifle slung over her shoulder. No one had even asked her name. Now, sitting in this auditorium, she wondered if today would be any different. The general was still talking, something about bravery and the American spirit. Sarah tuned back in just as he said the words she had been waiting for. And now, it is my honor to present the Silver Star for exceptional gallantry in action. The room went silent. This award recognizes not just courage, but leadership under fire. The kind of leadership that saves lives. Sarah's hands tightened in her lap. Major Richard Holloway, please come to the stage. The applause was thunderous. Holloway stood, buttoning his jacket, that same smug smile on his face. He walked down the aisle like he owned the place, shaking hands as he went. When he reached the stage, he saluted the general, then turned to face the audience. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. She had known this would happen. She had told herself she didn't care. But sitting here watching him accept an award for her work, for her decisions, for her leadership, it hurt more than she wanted to admit. The general began reading the citation. For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. Sarah stopped listening. She thought about leaving, just standing up and walking out. But that would draw attention, and she had never been one for scenes. So she sat. And she waited. Because tonight was not about Holloway. Tonight was about the truth. And the truth, Sarah had learned, always found a way to come out. The ceremony continued, but Sarah's mind was miles away. She watched Holloway shake the general's hand, watched him pose for photographs, watched him soak in the applause like he had earned every second of it. She wanted to feel angry. She wanted to feel betrayed, but mostly she just felt tired. This wasn't the first time she had been passed over. It wasn't the first time a man had taken credit for her work. In her 15 years of service, Sarah had learned that being good at your job wasn't always enough. Sometimes it didn't matter how skilled you were or how hard you worked. Sometimes all that mattered was who you knew and what you looked like in a uniform. And Sarah didn't look like the hero they wanted to celebrate. After the medal presentation, there was a reception in the officers' club. Sarah thought about skipping it, but she had promised herself she would see this through, so she walked across the base in her dress and heels, ignoring the looks and whispers that followed her. The officers' club was packed. Everyone wanted to congratulate Holloway, to shake his hand and hear his stories. Sarah grabbed a glass of water from the bar and found a quiet corner to stand in. She didn't have to wait long before the comments started. Look at Mitchell, all dressed up. Guess she's trying to remind everyone she's a woman. About time. She's been acting like one of the guys for too long. I heard she wore a dress because she's finally getting out. Transitioning to civilian life. Sarah took a slow sip of her water. Let them talk. She had bigger things to worry about. Across the room, Holloway was holding court surrounded by a crowd of admirers. He was telling the story of the mission again, his voice loud and confident. We were outnumbered 3-1, he said, gesturing with his hands. I knew we had to move fast. I repositioned the team, changed our approach, used the terrain to our advantage. Sarah's jaw tightened. Those were her words. Her decisions. There was one moment, Holloway continued, where I thought we might not make it. Enemy fighters on all sides, and our exit route was compromised. But I kept my head. I kept my team focused, and I got every single one of them home. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Sarah set down her glass. She had stayed quiet for 6 months. She had followed orders, kept her head down, trusted that the truth would eventually matter. But standing here, listening to Holloway lie to a room full of people who should know better, something inside her snapped. Not in an explosive way. Sarah didn't do explosive, but in a quiet, determined way that anyone who really knew her would recognize as dangerous. She started to walk toward the group, but a hand on her arm stopped her. Don't. Sarah turned. It was Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez, one of the few people on base she actually trusted. Emma had been part of the mission too, part of Sarah's team. He's not worth it, Emma said quietly. He's lying, Sarah replied, her voice calm but firm. I know. We all know. Emma glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Everyone who was there knows the truth, Sarah. We know it was you. Then why aren't any of you saying anything? Emma's expression was pained. Because it won't change anything. You know how this works. Holloway has friends in high places. The decision's already been made. If you call him out now, you'll just make yourself a target. Sarah looked at her for a long moment. Emma was right, of course. That was the smart play. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Survive to fight another day. But Sarah was tired of surviving. She was tired of watching mediocre men get promoted while exceptional women got overlooked. She was tired of being told to be grateful just for being allowed in the room. She was tired of pretending that any of this was okay. I'm not going to call him out, Sarah said finally. Emma looked relieved. Good, I'm going to let someone else do it. Before Emma could respond, Sarah walked away, heading toward the exit. She had somewhere to be. Outside, the evening air was cool and crisp. Sarah walked across the base with purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement. She reached the administration building and made her way to the office of Colonel James Pritchard. Pritchard was old-school military. Tough, fair, and respected by everyone who served under him. He had been the one to originally assign Sarah to the mission, the one who had promised her credit where credit was due. His office light was still on. Sarah knocked. Come in. She opened the door. Pritchard was at his desk reading through a stack of reports. He looked up and his eyebrows rose slightly when he saw her dress. Captain Mitchell, wasn't expecting to see you tonight. I need to talk to you, sir. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. Sarah sat, keeping her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Pritchard studied her for a moment. I saw the ceremony. Saw Holloway get his medal. Yes, sir. You have something you want to say about that? Sarah met his eyes. You promised me, sir. You said if I led that mission, if I brought everyone home, I would get the credit I deserved. Pritchard sighed, leaning back in his chair. I know what I said, Mitchell. Then why did Holloway get the Silver Star? Because Command made a decision that was out of my hands. Based on what? His report was full of lies. He didn't lead that mission. He barely participated. I made every tactical decision. I repositioned the team. I adapted when the intel was wrong. I brought everyone home. I know. Sarah blinked. You know? Of course I know. I read the after-action reports from every member of your team. I know exactly what happened out there. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking much older. But there are politics at play here, Mitchell. Things bigger than you or me. Politics, Sarah repeated, her voice flat. Holloway's father is a 3-star general. His uncle sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee. This medal was decided before you even got off the helicopter. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. So that's it? I did my job, I did it well, and I get nothing because Holloway has connections? You get to keep doing your job, Pritchard said. You get to keep serving. That has to be enough. It's not enough, sir. Pritchard's expression hardened. Then I don't know what to tell you, Captain. This is the military. Fair doesn't always mean equal, and equal doesn't always mean just. You're a good soldier, one of the best I've ever seen. But you need to learn when to let things go. Sarah stood. With all due respect, sir, I'm done letting things go. She turned and walked out before he could respond. Her heart was pounding now, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had just essentially told off a colonel. That was career suicide, and she knew it. But she also knew she couldn't live with herself if she stayed silent. She walked back toward the officers' club, but she didn't go inside. Instead, she stood outside, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. David Chen, investigative journalist. Former Marine. They had met years ago at a veterans event, and they had stayed in touch. David had made a name for himself exposing corruption and misconduct in military circles. If anyone would be interested in this story, it would be him. Sarah hesitated for just a moment. Once she made this call, there was no going back. She would be burning bridges, making enemies, possibly ending her career. But then she thought about Holloway in there, lying to a room full of people. She thought about all the women who would come after her, who would face the same battles, the same erasure. She made the call. David answered on the second ring. Sarah Mitchell, it's been a while. I have a story for you, Sarah said, and you're going to want to hear this. 3 weeks later, the story broke. It was a cool Monday morning when the article went live on a major news website. The headline read, Decorated Major awarded Silver Star for mission he didn't lead. Female captain erased from official record. By noon, it was everywhere. Cable news, social media, military forums. The story spread like wildfire. and with it came the details that Sarah had given David. The after-action reports from her team members, the timeline of decisions made during the mission, the testimony of soldiers who had been there and seen everything, and most damning of all, the original recommendation for the Silver Star, which had Sarah's name on it, not Holloway's. David had done his homework. He had interviewed Emma Rodriguez and 4 other members of the team, all of whom confirmed that Sarah had been the tactical leader. He had obtained classified documents through Freedom of Information Act requests. He had built a case that was impossible to ignore. Sarah was in her office when her phone started ringing. She let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. Within an hour, she was called to Colonel Pritchard's office. He did not look happy. "Sit down, Captain." Sarah sat. Pritchard tossed a tablet onto the desk between them. The article was pulled up on the screen. "Care to explain this?" "It's the truth, sir. It's a breach of protocol. You went to the press with classified information about a covert operation. I gave them unclassified information that was already part of the official record. The after-action reports are not classified. The medal recommendation was not classified. Everything in that article came from legitimate sources." Pritchard's jaw tightened. "You know what you've done, Mitchell? You've made this base look bad. You've embarrassed command. You've put a target on your own back." "I told the truth. The truth isn't always what matters." Sarah met his eyes. "Then what does matter, sir?" Pritchard stared at her for a long moment, then looked away. "You're dismissed. Stay available. There will be an investigation." Sarah stood and left. As she walked back to her office, she could feel eyes on her. Everyone knew now. Everyone had read the article or heard about it. Some people looked at her with respect, others with suspicion or outright hostility. But Sarah kept walking. Over the next few days, the story continued to grow. News outlets picked it up. Veterans groups started demanding answers. Social media exploded with hashtags like Justice for Mitchell and Stolen Valor. Major Holloway went silent. He canceled all public appearances and refused to comment. His father, the 3-star general, released a statement supporting his son and calling the article a politically motivated hit piece. But the evidence was overwhelming. One by one, members of Sarah's team started speaking out publicly. Emma Rodriguez gave an interview on national television, describing in detail how Sarah had led the mission while Holloway had mostly stayed out of the way. A former command officer came forward and confirmed that the original medal recommendation had been for Sarah, but it had been changed after pressure from higher-ups. The Pentagon launched an official investigation, and through it all, Sarah stayed quiet. She went to work every day, did her job, and waited. She knew the military bureaucracy moved slowly. She knew that powerful people would fight to protect one of their own. She knew that there were no guarantees, but she also knew that the truth was out there now, and it couldn't be taken back. 2 weeks after the article was published, Sarah was called to a meeting with a panel of senior officers. She sat alone at a table, facing 5 stern-faced colonels and generals. They asked her questions for 3 hours, about the mission, about her decision to go to the press, about her allegations against Major Holloway. Sarah answered every question honestly and directly. When it was over, one of the generals, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, spoke. "Captain Mitchell, I want you to understand something. What you did was risky. You bypassed the chain of command. You went public with grievances that should have been handled internally. In doing so, you've created a significant problem for this institution." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "I understand, ma'am." The general leaned forward. "But you also told the truth, and the truth matters, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable." Sarah felt her heart beat a little faster. "This panel has reviewed all available evidence," the general continued. "We have concluded that the original medal recommendation was correct. The Silver Star should have gone to you, Captain Mitchell, for your exceptional leadership during Operation Silent Crescent." Sarah's breath caught. "Furthermore, we have found that Major Holloway knowingly misrepresented his role in the mission and accepted recognition he did not earn. He will be formally reprimanded and his Silver Star will be revoked." The room was silent. "You will receive your Silver Star at a ceremony 3 weeks from today. We hope you will accept it." Sarah's voice was steady when she spoke. "I will, ma'am." "Thank you," the general nodded. "Dismissed, Captain." Sarah stood, saluted, and walked out of the room. She made it halfway down the hallway before she had to stop and lean against the wall, her hands shaking. She had won. Against all odds, against all expectations, she had actually won. Emma was waiting for her outside the building. When she saw Sarah's face, she broke into a huge smile. "They sided with you." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Emma pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." Sarah hugged her back, letting herself feel the relief, the validation, the overwhelming sense that maybe, just maybe, the system could still work. But even as she celebrated, she knew this wasn't really about her. It was about every woman who had been overlooked, dismissed, or erased. Every soldier who had been told to stay quiet and accept injustice. This was about proving that speaking up mattered, that the truth mattered, and that sometimes, even against powerful opposition, the right thing could still win. The ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks later. This time, it would be different. This time, it would be public. The military, stung by the negative press and public outcry, had decided to make Sarah's Silver Star presentation into a statement. They would show the world that they took accountability seriously, that they valued all their soldiers equally. Sarah knew it was partly damage control. But she also knew it was an opportunity to be seen, to be recognized, to stand as proof that women belonged in every role, at every level, and that was worth something. The morning of the ceremony, Sarah stood in front of her mirror, looking at the navy blue dress hanging on the back of her door, the same dress she had worn to Holloway's ceremony, the dress that had drawn so many stares and whispers. She smiled slightly. She could have worn her dress uniform. That would have been the traditional choice, the safe choice, but Sarah hadn't gotten to where she was by playing it safe. She put on the dress. When she arrived at the ceremony venue, a large hall on base, much bigger than the one they had used for Holloway, the place was packed, not just with military personnel, but with press, with veterans groups, with advocates and supporters. Sarah walked in with her head high, and this time the stares felt different. This time, they were looks of respect, of admiration, of solidarity. She saw Emma in the crowd grinning and giving her a thumbs up. She saw other women in uniform, some she knew and many she didn't, watching her with expressions that said, "You did this for all of us." She took her seat in the front row. The ceremony began with the usual formalities, speeches about honor and service and sacrifice. Sarah listened politely, her hands folded in her lap. But this time, when the commanding general took the stage, he didn't sugarcoat anything. "We are here today to right a wrong," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. 3 months ago, a Silver Star was awarded for Operation Silent Crescent. It was given to the wrong person, not because of an administrative error, but because of a failure in leadership, a failure to recognize merit over politics, a failure to see past our own biases. The room was absolutely silent. Captain Sarah Mitchell led that mission. She made the decisions that brought her team home safely and accomplished the objective. She demonstrated extraordinary heroism and tactical brilliance, and she was ignored. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Today, we correct that. Today, we honor the soldier who truly deserves this recognition. The general looked directly at her. "Captain Mitchell, please come to the stage." Sarah stood. The applause was immediate and thunderous. She walked down the aisle, and this time people weren't whispering about her dress. They were standing, clapping, honoring her. When she reached the stage and saluted the general, he returned the salute with clear respect. "Captain Sarah Mitchell," he said, reading from the citation, "for extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy." Captain Mitchell demonstrated exceptional courage, brilliant tactical leadership, and unwavering commitment to her team. When faced with overwhelming odds and compromised intelligence, she adapted swiftly, repositioned her forces, and led her team to mission success with 0 casualties. Her actions reflect the highest credit upon herself and the United States Army. He pinned the Silver Star to her dress, right over her heart. Sarah stood at attention, but inside, she was feeling everything at once. Pride, relief, vindication, grief for all the years she had been overlooked, hope for all the women who would come after her. The general shook her hand, then stepped back. "Captain Mitchell, would you like to say a few words?" Sarah hadn't prepared a speech. She hadn't expected to be asked. but she stepped up to the microphone anyway. She looked out at the crowd, at the sea of faces, military and civilian, young and old, men and women. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "I accept this medal not just for myself, but for every soldier who has ever been told they weren't good enough. For every woman who has been passed over, dismissed, or erased. For every person who has had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I wore a dress today because I wanted to make a point. I wanted to remind everyone that you don't have to look a certain way or act a certain way to be a hero. You don't have to fit someone else's idea of what a soldier should be. You just have to do your job with honor and courage and integrity." The crowd was hanging on every word. 6 months ago, I led a mission. I made hard decisions under pressure. I brought my team home, and I was prepared to accept that no one would ever know. That's what we've been taught to accept. To do the work without expecting the credit. To be grateful just for being allowed in the room. Her voice grew stronger. "But I'm done accepting that. And I hope you are too. Because we deserve better. We deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized for what we actually do, not who we know or what we look like in a uniform." She looked directly at the camera she knew was recording this. To every young woman thinking about serving, to every soldier fighting for recognition, to everyone who has ever been told to stay quiet and know your place, don't. Speak up. Tell your truth. Demand what you've earned. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, there was another reception, but this one felt completely different. People approached Sarah with genuine respect. Fellow soldiers thanked her for speaking up. Women told her she had inspired them. Even some of the officers who had been cold to her before came to shake her hand. Though whether they truly respected her or were just covering their bases, she wasn't sure. Either way, she accepted their congratulations gracefully. Emma found her in the crowd. "That speech was incredible," Sarah smiled. "I meant every word, I know you did. That's what made it powerful." As the evening went on, Sarah found herself thinking about Holloway. He wasn't at the ceremony, not surprisingly. According to the official statement, he had requested reassignment and would be transferring to a different base. His career wasn't over, but it was certainly damaged. Sarah didn't feel triumphant about that. She didn't hate Holloway. She just wanted him to face the consequences of his actions, the same way anyone else would. Later, as the crowd thinned out, Colonel Pritchard approached her. He looked uncomfortable. "Captain Mitchell." "Colonel, that was a good speech. You handled yourself well." "Thank you, sir." He hesitated, then said, "I owe you an apology. I should have fought harder for you. I should have pushed back when they tried to give your medal to Holloway. I told myself I was being practical, but really I was just being a coward." Sarah studied him for a moment. "I appreciate that, sir. For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't listen to me." "I'm glad you fought," Sarah nodded. "So am I." As she drove home that night, still wearing her dress, the silver star in a case on the passenger seat, Sarah thought about everything that had happened. The mission, the betrayal, the fight for recognition, the victory. It had been exhausting. It had been painful. There had been moments when she thought about giving up, about accepting that this was just how things were. But she hadn't given up. She had fought, and she had won. Not just for herself, but for every person who came after her. She thought about the young women who would see her story, who would know that speaking up was possible, that demanding justice was worth it, that they didn't have to accept being erased. That was the real victory. Not the medal, as meaningful as it was, but the message that truth matters. That courage comes in many forms. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. Sarah pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the silver star. She had worn a dress to the ceremony, and they hadn't known she led the mission. But they knew now. They all knew now. And that made all the difference. She got out of the car, locked it, and walked into her house ready for whatever came next. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't done fighting. She was just getting started.